3 seconds of nothing. Then this. They expected you to fall apart. Not cruelly. They genuinely expected it. The people who watched what happened to you, who witnessed the betrayal or heard about it or pieced it together from the fragments that made it into public view, they looked at you and ran the calculation that most people run when someone they know gets hurt badly enough. They gave you a timeline unconsciously without announcing it. They assigned you a duration, a period of visible damage that would confirm that what happened was as serious as it looked, that you were human enough to be broken by something that would have broken them. And then they waited for the breaking. It did not come, not in the form they were watching for, not with the specific texture of someone coming undone in ways that are legible and familiar and confirm the narrative that betrayal produces victims and victims behave in recognizable ways. You did not behave in recognizable ways. And that, Virgo, is what has left an entire room of people standing with their mouths open. Let me tell you what pity actually is before we go any further, because understanding it precisely changes everything about how you receive what I am about to say. Pity is not love. It is not even close to love. Pity is the specific emotional response that arrives when someone looks at another person and decides that person is beneath the level of what life should have given them. It contains within it always a measurement, a comparison between where you are and where the person doing the pitying believes a person in your position should be. It requires them to be above you, even when it is offered genuinely, even when the people who pity you actually care about you. There is a hierarchy built into the gesture, a looking down at rather than a looking across at, a this poor thing rather than a this full person navigating something real. The people around you after the betrayal went into pity mode, some of them with genuine warmth, some of them with the specific pleasure that certain people take in being in a position to offer pity to someone they have always found slightly too composed for their comfort. All of them with the shared assumption that what happened to you had brought you to a level where pity was the appropriate response. They looked at what was done to you and they decided they understood what it had made you. They were wrong. Here is what they saw instead of what they expected. You moved, not dramatically, not with the specific performance of someone who wants to be seen not falling apart. You simply continued, did the next thing, made the next decision, oriented toward the next day with the particular infuriating, quietly extraordinary quality of someone who processes in private and functions in public with a completeness that leaves no visible seam between the two. You did not ask for their pity. You did not perform your pain for their comfort. You did not give them the extended period of visible damage that their timeline had allocated for you. And that refusal, that utterly natural, not even conscious refusal to collapse in the way they expected you to, did something to them. It confused them first. Then it unsettled them. Then it stopped them completely. Because pity requires a particular kind of participation from its recipient. It requires someone to stay in the position of needing it, to remain sufficiently diminished that the gesture of looking down at them continues to make sense. And you did not stay diminished. You did not cooperate with the narrative they had assembled around what happened to you. And the confusion of watching someone not be what you decided they should be is a very specific kind of shock. They are in that shock right now. What was the response that shocked them? I want to be precise here because precision matters and vague answers serve nobody. It was not defiance. You did not stand up and announce anything, did not make a speech, did not perform strength for an audience that was watching for weakness. It was something much harder to explain and much harder to dismiss. It was dignity, unperformed, unannounced. The specific, almost architectural quality of someone who knows who they are at a level that a single event, however significant, however deliberately cruel, however precisely aimed at the most vulnerable places, cannot restructure. They hit the wall expecting it to crack. The wall was not a wall, it was a foundation, and foundations do not crack from a single strike. They are what you build from. They are what you return to. They are what makes the thing standing above them possible, regardless of what hits it. You return to your foundation. And the people watching expected rubble and found you standing in the same place you have always stood, perhaps slightly differently weighted, perhaps with something new and hard earned in your eyes, but standing fully in your own ground. That is the response that shocked them. Not bravery, not recovery, not resilience in the motivational poster sense of that word. Something older and quieter and more real than any of those things. Just you, still you, unchanged in the places that actually matter. Now, I have to say something that might be harder to hear than anything else in this reading. The pity bothered you, not on the surface. You managed the surface perfectly as you always do. But somewhere underneath the composed reception of it, somewhere in the honest interior of your experience of being looked at with that specific quality of eyes, something tightened because you are not someone who wants to be above pity. You are someone who wants to be seen accurately, and pity is inaccurate. It is a fundamental misreading of what you are. It looks at what happened to you and concludes damage when the truth is something considerably more complex. When the truth is that you were hurt, genuinely hurt, in ways that cost something real, and that the hurt happened inside someone who was built to process it without letting it define them, and that the processing has been some of the hardest and least visible work you have ever done. Pity sees the event. It does not see the work. It does not see the nights when the foundation was the only thing holding and you held it anyway. It does not see the specific, quiet, repeated choice to not become what was done to you. It does not see the extraordinary discipline of someone who refuses to let a betrayal become their identity, even when every social signal around them is pointing toward that identity as the available option. The people pitying you do not have access to that. And being pitied for something they do not have access to is a particular kind of loneliness. I see it, even if they do not. Talk to me in the comments, not about the betrayal, about the pity, about whether you have felt the specific discomfort of being on the receiving end of someone's reduced expectations for you and wanting to say that is not what I am, but not wanting to say it because saying it would look like protesting too much. Tell me if you know that feeling. One line. That is all. Here is what the shock actually contains, because shock has layers, and the top layer is not the most important one. The top layer is surprise. Simple, surface level surprise that you did not respond the way they predicted, that the timeline they assigned to your breaking has passed without the breaking occurring. That the person they position themselves to support through a particular kind of diminishment has turned out not to require that support in the way they imagined. But underneath the surprise is something more uncomfortable for them. A question, an involuntary, not entirely welcome question that your response has placed directly in the center of their understanding of themselves. The question is this: would I have done the same? If what happened to you had happened to them, if the betrayal had been theirs, if they had been the one standing in the aftermath of someone they trusted doing something genuinely damaging, would they have responded with this quality of groundedness? Would they have found their way back to themselves this completely? Would they have refused the victim narrative with this much grace and this little performance? They are sitting with that question. Most of them are discovering that the answer is no. That what they are watching you do is not something they could access. Not at this speed, not with this quality, not with this specific, almost serene commitment to remaining yourself in the rubble of someone else's choices. Your response has shown them something about themselves, and that something is not entirely comfortable, Virgo. Let me tell you the thing I think you actually need to hear underneath all of this. You are allowed to have been hurt. The dignity does not require the erasure of the wound. The continued standing does not require the pretense that nothing happened worth falling down about. The refusal to perform damage does not mean the damage was not real. It was real. What they did cost you something, not your foundation, but something real and valuable, and yours that they did not have the right to take and took anyway. And the fact that you recovered, are recovering, have been building yourself back in the ways that were genuinely disrupted while keeping the core entirely intact, none of that means the cost was not real. You are allowed to know both things simultaneously. That you are fine in the deepest sense of that word, and that what happened was not, those two things coexisting is not contradiction. It is sophistication. It is the specific, earned sophistication of someone who has learned to hold complexity without needing it to resolve into something simpler for the comfort of people watching. The people watching are not comfortable. That is their work to do, not yours. Here is what comes after shock for the people around you: reassessment. They are going back through what they thought they knew about you and finding that it does not quite hold in the same way now that they have this new information. And the pity they offered turns out to have been unnecessary. The timeline they assign turns out to have been based on an underestimation so significant that it requires a fundamental update to how they understand who you are. Some of them will say something, will reach toward you with something different from pity, something closer to respect, to genuine, slightly humbled recognition of what they witnessed. Will find words for it that are more accurate than what they were using before. Others will not say anything, will simply adjust quietly, will treat you differently without acknowledging that the treating differently represents a correction, will encounter you going forward with a quality of attention they did not previously offer because what they have witnessed has earned it. And one or two of them will feel something they were not expecting to feel. Inspired, not in the shallow sense, in the specific unsettling, this person is showing me something about what is possible, sense that occasionally happens when you watch someone navigate something genuinely difficult with a quality of grace that you did not know was available. They are looking at you and recalibrating, not because you did anything for them, because you did something for yourself. And the doing of it was visible enough to change how they see what is possible. One last thing. The betrayal tried to tell you something about your value. Betrayal always does. That is part of what makes it so specifically cruel. It is not just an action, it is an implicit statement, a declaration by someone who had access to you that the access was not worth honoring, that what you trusted them with was not worth protecting, that you were not worth the basic dignity of being treated by someone according to your actual value. That statement was wrong, not just morally wrong, factually wrong, as evidence by every person who has been standing nearby, watching how you handled what that statement tried to make of you and finding themselves unable to look away, unable to reconcile the statement with the person standing in front of them, unable to hold the version of you that the betrayal implied alongside the version of you they are actually encountering. The version they are actually encountering is winning without a fight, without effort, simply by being exactly what it has always been, something that a single act of someone else's failure cannot define, something that was here before the betrayal, something that will be here long after it. You exactly as you are, which, it turns out, is exactly what left an entire room of people speechless. Leave something below if this found the right place, if this named the particular, specific, hard to articulate experience of being underestimated in your pain by people who thought they were helping. You are not what happened to you. You never were. And the room is just now beginning to understand that. Welcome to the part where they catch up.